So with me this morning is Chad Rea. He is a multidisciplinary artist, words are hard, who was born in Inglewood, California, and raised in El Paso, Texas. He received his BA in advertising from Texas Tech University in 1994 and holds a certificate in advanced spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Your work is very satirical. I think it's very enjoyable. I personally really love your work. I think it's just enjoyable. It's kind of thought-provoking. Could you tell us a little bit about the fact that you don't have like an official art degree, right? Like a BFA art?
Yeah, I have a degree in advertising and creative writing, and I think my journey as an artist has been an interesting one. You know, when I was growing up, my grandmother was very creative. You know, I'd spent summers with her and she would take me to Michael's and just fill up the shopping cart with everything from stained glass to clay, you know, and paint. And all summer I would make gifts for my family. And then, you know, in high school, you know, around the time when you're about 16 years old, the, you know, guidance counselor expects you to have life figured out and, you know, where you're going to go to school and all that good stuff. And quite frankly, I wasn't really good at anything but art and writing during that time. And I ended up choosing a career path in advertising because I didn't have the confidence to be either an author or an artist. And so, you know, every decision from that point forward was, you know, to get a degree in advertising. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I had a very successful career in advertising as a copywriter and a creative director. And, you know, so it was a very creative field. And the reason this is kind of like a long-winded way to get to my education is advertising was my education, you know, and being able to collaborate and be inspired by the art world to bring ideas to life and to connect with people and to be very sort of persuasive in messaging and get people to feel something. And so I didn't make, you know, art during that time. I wasn't calling myself an artist. That came much later. But the short answer is advertising was my education into the sort of art world and being creative and being self-expressive.
Do you feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between, I guess, more commercialized art, like in advertising or graphic design, and that way, like more, I guess, fine art?
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting question, and it tends to come up in my own mind quite a bit. I think even in my own journey as an artist, you know, I started out as an abstract painter, and, you know, a lot of that's left up to interpretation by the viewer. And I think a lot of art is that way. Whereas advertising or, you know, design, those sorts of mediums, you have to be very clear with what you're trying to say. And there's no sort of ambiguity with your message. And so now that I've incorporated a lot of my copywriting skills and incorporating words into my art, some might say it's too direct, you know, and there's not a lot left open to interpretation. So yeah, I guess there's different views on what art is, but, you know, I'm very inspired by, you know, word artists like Barbara Kruger and Jenny Holzer. Like, those influenced me in my 20s when I was in advertising, you know, and of course, like Andy Warhol, he had an advertising background and was very sort of commercial in his art, and, you know, Jeff Koons. So yeah, those are the types of artists that I you know, admire and, you know, kind of have a kinship with, if you will.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what copywriting is and kind of explain like what that entails?
Yeah, it's not the circle C that you see on the bottom of things. A lot of people think I'm like, I don't know what that job is, but like, it's not like copyright material with an R, it's with a W. And typically in advertising, you work in pairs, and there's an art director or designer paired with a copywriter, and together you ideate and come up with, concepts, content. And traditionally the copywriter is in charge of the words and the art director designer is in charge of the visuals. It doesn't mean that you can't switch roles and collaborate. In fact, when I was in school, I trained to be an art director and decided only after an internship that copywriters went home earlier than art directors and designers, because you work together and you come up with the ideas. And then when it comes to actually producing and executing, the writing has to come first before the designer can incorporate it into the work. And so, the designers and art directors end up getting the sort of last link in the process and have to work later than copywriters. But yeah, they're the problem solvers. They're the conceptual thinkers, and really, creativity. One of the definitions that I like most is that it's really just about connecting dots, and in the advertising world, it's about sort of connecting a message between a brand and a consumer. And so I feel art isn't, any different really from the creator to the audience, or what I would say is like more of a participant, because your audience isn't this static thing, and to figure out a way to include them in the work somehow.
Right. Is your work, or like when you graduated college, was your work more freelance, or did you work for a specific company, or?
Yeah, so I got my first job at a place called TRG, which was an ad agency in Dallas, Texas, and worked on a lot of like computer game stuff. I worked on Doc Martens. This was back when like Hummer, the car or truck was popular. And it was more of like a youth marketing agency. And then after that, I got recruited to work in London. And then after that, Amsterdam. And then I started my own agency in Los Angeles. And then after that, I went to work for a company in Portland. And yeah, so I've always worked with companies apart from the time when I started my own company and freelancing and consulting, and also teaching advertising at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and also at T. That was part of the reason why I came to Austin, was to run, or I should say co-run the advertising department there.
Do you feel that your advertising degree, like given another opportunity, or not necessarily opportunity, but do you ever consider getting like a more art degree, like either like I guess it wouldn't be a BFA or an MFA, but like, something a little more formal?
Yeah. I've had that conversation with a lot of friends, artists, and because I wonder if having a degree from a reputable art program would open more doors. That being said, I've been pretty fortunate with the amount of doors that I've been able to open. I think apart from maybe just some like technical things, or, maybe learning a little bit more about like, art history or something like that, maybe it would be beneficial. I think honestly, it would be more of like the experience of working alongside other artists and being inspired, and just kind of having the focus to concentrate on my art practice. I think that would be fun. That being said, I owe a lot of learning and skill sets to advertising, and, even the artists and creative writers that usually get into advertising and then decide later that they want to be a full-time artist or a writer. The skills that you learn, just in terms of like selling your work, pitching your work, trying to be convincing, putting together decks, being able to be creative on demand, learning not to be precious with your work, being able to generate like hundreds, of ideas in a day, and then have a boardroom, comment on them. And, there's just like this huge gauntlet that you have to get through for your idea to see the light of day, and even then it's like, if you're making like a video, you've got to hire a director, or a photographer. And then there's like food stylists and wardrobe. And there are so many people that can affect your vision in both a good way or a bad way. And, now that I've sort of stepped into this role as an artist since like 2017, it's so freeing, to basically have the same process, but rely on myself to, be the the director, the food stylist, all those things. And if it is outside of my comfort zone, then I bring people in, fabricators or something like that. But yeah, the short answer of your question is I would, if I had to do it all over again, I would probably still do advertising, but yeah, maybe after art school. I don't know.
What made you decide to go to tech?
I had more fun at their orientation than any other colleges. I was attending high school in Pittsburgh, and so I had to go in-state, either in Pennsylvania or Texas, because that's where my family was from. And I toured all the schools, and yeah, I probably really wanted to go to Texas State or North Texas because of the music scene there. But yeah, I just had a lot of fun and ended up going there, and then it was too late, once I decided halfway through that I should have switched.
Was your program very large? Like, did you have a lot of kids in your class? Did you have like a big school, or was it more personalized, I guess?
In college?
Yeah, just like your program, like the school might be big, but like sometimes like the art department's really small at a school, so you get a little bit more like, I guess, one-on-one relationship with people.
Yeah, no, advertising is in mass communications. Even at UT, it's, the design program is in the arts and technology college, which makes sense. It's weird though that there's not more sort of collaboration. And at Tech, they didn't have a creative program. You can get a degree in advertising and become like an account manager. You can become a producer. You can become like a media strategist, or more of they call them planners, which are more like research. And, so there's lots of different hats that you can wear. And the creative program is pretty specific, and they didn't have one, but I didn't know any better, and after I graduated with my portfolio, I couldn't get a job. And so I ended up going and taking a couple of portfolio classes, at what was at the time East Texas State in Commerce, Texas, but I think now it's Texas A&M. UT's got one of the best creative advertising programs in the country, definitely, in the top 3. So, and they're pretty small classes, maybe 15 people. So yeah, some of them can be, intimate, but they're pretty intensive programs.
Could you tell us a little bit about your master's and why you decided to get your master's?
COVID happened, and I was living with my girlfriend and her child, and a lot of stuff was coming up, a lot of trauma and feelings. And, when I lived in Los Angeles, where University of Santa Monica is, a lot of my friends had gone through the program. I mean, I knew probably 10 people that had gone through the program, and people from all over the world would fly in to take the class. And it just wasn't, it just wasn't available to me to be able to do that. And when COVID happened, they ended up offering the program online for the first time in 40 years. And, I think the best way to describe the program is, if anything disturbs your peace, if anything upsets you, that's an opportunity to work on that particular issue or how it affects you, kind of thing. And so it was a 2-year program. There was about 250 students, and it's like doing therapy for 11 hours a day, and being both the patient or the client and the therapist. And I was just able to work through a lot of things and change a lot of my beliefs. For example, life happens for you and not to you. And that's been hugely transformative in my outlook on life, my relationships with others, myself, and most definitely my art, because my art has kind of taken a little bit of a 180 from being what I would call activist art to, it's a different kind of activism, It's just one that's more about a shared joy and not a shared upset.
Do you find that it's a little bit more therapeutic to make art that's like that? Like it changes since your vision change, like there's a little bit more relief, or not relief, it's a little bit more relaxing maybe, or?
I hadn't really thought about it, but, they say, your outer world reality is a reflection of your inner world reality, and so if you're not happy, the world's not going to look, the way that you want it to, kind of thing. And once I started seeing the world without judgment and being more accepting and compassionate towards other people, you start looking for the lessons. It's moves from this like victim mentality of like, oh, all this bad that's happening in the world is happening to me. And when I started seeing things as like, okay, there's a lesson in here, I think just in general, I feel much happier and I'm at peace. And that is what is coming out in the work. And I don't know if, when I was miserable or unhappy or depressed, if it was any more cathartic or, to bring out those feelings. The one thing that I will say back to this idea of a shared upset to this shared joy, I've done exhibitions on like American gun culture, for example, and people would walk out of those experiences saying, holy like, I feel awful. It's like, good job. Like, I feel what you felt. I felt that your anger and your upset and the sadness that you feel with everything that's happening with mass shootings. And now that I'm creating work that's about a shared joy, I get to see kids, like parents talk to their kids about the art and come out of there going, man, I just feel so good about myself and the world. It's almost as if it's a release from everything that they're experiencing in their everyday life or on the news or through social media. Like, they don't, in my opinion, want to be reminded of that stuff, and I always thought it, and I wasn't selling any of the work from the gun show, because it was like, anybody that's going to buy a bag, full of bullets and put it on their mantle, they're probably getting the wrong message from it, so yeah. I don't know. It's weird. I don't think that artists need to be like disgruntled or depressed or focus on their trauma to be productive as an artist. Because my ideas are just still flowy, and being in this positive mindset. So
That's beautiful. What made you start branching out into more your art practice versus your advertising and stuff?
It's been a lifelong process of like trial and error. And what I mean by that is like you figure out what brings you joy and what you don't like. And some of the things that I don't like are boardrooms, compromising my vision, and being an artist is just so freeing for me. I used to think, as a musician that was like pure bliss. Like you can get into flow and you just kind of lose yourself and you don't have people fuck with your music. Maybe a producer does, once you get signed or, in that sort of machine. But I think for me, advertising, the being creative on demand, working 12, 16-hour days, always being on call. Yeah, it wears you down, and when I started making art, the first painting I did was maybe 25 years ago, and it was this abstract painting. I painted 2 paintings in my garage. I thought one of them was okay, so I rolled it up and it traveled the world with me until I moved to Austin, maybe like 15 years ago. And it was the first time I had room in my house to hang up this large painting. And it was an abstract piece, and I put it on Instagram, and an artist friend of mine said, "Hey, did you paint that?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You need to paint more." So I went to Jerry's, and bought a ton of canvas and paint. And I ended up painting over 100 paintings in 172 days. And one of the first paintings from that time I put on social media, and that somebody saw it, and I got my first solo exhibition based on that. And I just haven't stopped, and a little time before COVID, I went to a workshop on purpose and walked out of there claiming the title of an artist, which I would have never, even though I'd painted, 172 paintings or 100 paintings or whatever, and I'd been making art, I would have never considered myself an artist. And that workshop gave me the confidence to basically own that and lean into that and basically treat everything that I do from that perspective. And so, when the phone does ring occasionally to do some freelance advertising work, I look at it as an artist. And so like some of the content that I'm making is just strange, and in like a good way. So yeah, it's a very different sort of world, advertising is very lucrative and making art is not, or at least not yet, but I get so much more joy out of it. It is so fun just to like make stuff all day, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
So right now you're a full-time artist.
Yeah, I mean, apart from, I've got a lot of other things going on. I run a gallery out of my house. I have a couple of rooms that I rent on Airbnb. I just bought an airport shuttle bus that I'm transforming into an art bus. And so, yeah, I'm creating a sort of ecosystem of art related businesses, but it's not me just making and selling my art is not 100% of my income. Yeah.
Do you feel that your degree in advertising and the path you took set you up to have those hard business skills for what you're doing right now a little bit more than like, I guess, a more traditional art degree would?
I can only say, because that's the path that I don't know what art school teaches you, I haven't been. I think, will teach you technique and art history. I mean, that's all I can sort of, and maybe just being in that supportive environment. I think advertising is just a very sort of disciplined process. Yeah, from like being able to put together decks to be able to know how people think. You become kind of a sociologist and a psychologist, to understand why people respond to certain things, and ultimately it's this art of persuasion to not only be able to clearly communicate a specific message, but to have an intended result. Like you want someone to see something and go to a website. You want somebody to see something and buy it, And so or feel, sometimes it's just, I just want somebody to feel a certain way, Coca-Cola, open happiness. Like, let's just make people feel good and want to drink a Coke for no reason, And so I like to look at my work from a messaging standpoint. Like, what is it that I'm trying to say here? What do I want somebody to feel? And advertising is really big on the medium is the message, and it's really effective advertising is about putting the right message in front of somebody at the right time. Meaning you have to be aware of like where the ad is. Are they scrolling on their phone? Is it on a food blog? Is it on a billboard? Is it on Spotify at a certain time of day? Like, you have to think that way. And so a lot of my work is taking into consideration, some of my painting, one of them that will be exhibited at K-Space, I made out of insect paper, like fly paper. And it says, shine your light. And there's a bunch of bugs, like real bugs. I put the painting outside next to my porch light, and, all these bugs came and decided to be part of my art. But, and it's called What It's Like to Awaken, because my experience of having my sort of heart open up and becoming more vulnerable. You get tested a lot, and it's like more shit comes at you, just when you think that you've figured it all out, and so I wanted to find a way to bring that to life, and using materials like that is a skill that I learned in advertising, And same with like the bag of bullets I was talking about. That was a piece called The Weight of the World. And it was, over 4,000 AR-15 shells inside of a clear backpack. And that was, sort of a commentary on the mass shootings where they required students to bring clear backpacks, into school, and as if that was going to solve, the problem. And, in advertising, that would have made a great poster, and I would have hired a photographer and, a set designer to build the bag of bullets, and it would take a photo of it, and it would be a public service announcement thing for, whatever, guns are, bad or whatever. Yeah. In many ways, I get to make these physical objects that are outside of, say a video or a billboard. I can still make public art and put it out, for the public to see, or create environments in a gallery, or anywhere else for that matter, to create a certain environment that is designed to get people to feel a certain way, or to walk out of there with some sort of message and maybe inspire them to do something.
What inspired you to start a gallery outside of your house or in your home?
During COVID, I think a lot of people realized they didn't have to live in the thick of things in a city, and they could move out, to the country or whatever. And so I had originally had this idea to get like 10 or 20 acres and put a barn dominium in the middle, as a big like event space, and get a bunch of trailers and invite artists out to just have like this artist commune, and just make art. Like that was my sort of dream. And I think a lot of other people during COVID had a similar idea to like move out of Austin or wherever. And I was just getting outbid, and like that dream was slowly slipping away from me. And I actually had a show at Paso House in San Antonio, and I was driving back from there, and I was thinking maybe I'll just stop in LockhART and see, what they've got going on. I'd come out here for art shows. There's a couple of good galleries, and this house popped up and on Zillow, and I looked in the windows and I was like, this is an art gallery. Like there's a lot of windows, and it's a very large, like mid-century modern house. And I just thought I could turn this into kind of like a community space and help other emerging artists and invite the community over and, do artist talks and have an artist residency, and, artists can come stay here. And so, yeah, that's what I ended up doing. And I have shows here every couple of months, and, with 3 or 4 artists at a time. And it's just a lot of fun. And sometimes artists will, like paint the garage or paint, a wall. And eventually I hope that the yard is full of outdoor sculptures. And so it's just a really fun, inviting place. My studio's here. And so I can just make stuff and support people and connect with other artists. And it's been amazing. I love it.
Do you ever struggle with the, I guess, more business side of running an art gallery and a studio and your art practice and making time to continue making art?
It doesn't take that much time. I think working with artists is kind of like trying to herd cats sometime, like you're like shaking your head. Yeah. Yeah. It's, and maybe this is the art school advertising thing, but it's like when there's deadlines and, you've got to get things done quickly, and you can't have typos, and files need to be in the proper format, and, all those things. That's the challenging part, like chasing people up for the things. But at the end of the day, it's not that much work. And again, I think the payoff is to be able to connect with other people, in the community, and to hopefully elevate some other artists. I've given a few artists, like it's their first show that they've ever had, and that's pretty cool, to be able to give somebody an opportunity that hopefully they can then use as an example for the next gallery. It's like somebody gave you a chance, and, maybe I'll give you a chance. So I really like that part of it.
Yeah. If you had any advice to give to young aspiring artists, either who recently graduated high school, going to college, or recently graduated college, or somewhere in that realm, what would that be?
Travel the world for, well, as long as you want, really. But I would say before you jump into anything, just because I need a degree, especially if you're unsure, and even if you're sure, like you're really not sure until you start going through the program and you're like, oh, this is way harder, or this got way more math, than I thought, or whatever. But yeah, definitely do some traveling first. And then the other thing is just to follow your bliss, and try not to get hung up with like money concerns or whatever. Maybe there's pressure from your parents to be a doctor or a lawyer or, something that's, more respectable, or if you really like making art, if you really like animals, if you really like making coffee, like whatever it is, follow your passion, be unreasonable. Like you're young enough to make mistakes, and you're definitely going to make mistakes. So make a ton of them when you're younger, and you'll just be wiser and better for it. Do what scares you.
Thank you. This podcast is a part of Case-Based Contemporary's art education programming. Case-Based Contemporary is a 501c3 nonprofit organization committed to presenting and promoting contemporary art. As a dynamic forum for creative exchange and experimentation, we strive to educate and raise awareness for innovative art in South Texas. To support this podcast, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Case-Based Contemporary, or check out our education page on Instagram at Case-Based Art Lab. For those interested in contributing or becoming a member of Case-Based Contemporary, please visit our website at www.casebasedcontemporary.org.